I used to believe trust worked like a porch light. Flip it on when the world gets dark and you'll find your way home. That was the version of marriage I signed up for. Shared jokes, double-wrapped burritos on the couch, and weekend errands that turned into detours for cinnamon rolls. Then small shadows crept in, nothing dramatic. Just shifts that felt like a pebble in a shoe. A changed passcode on her phone, for security. A new perfume, from a sample box. Late-night laughter muffled behind the bathroom door while she watched reels. None of it proved anything on its own. Together, it hummed like a wire. "Babe, you've got to trust me more," she said one Tuesday, light and breezy, the way a flight attendant says everything's fine during turbulence. "I'm going on a girls' trip to St. Pete. Sun, sand, no drama. You know I've been stressed." She stressed a lot lately, about work, about friends, about how I loaded the dishwasher like a raccoon. I said yes, of course. She spun the phone around to show a group chat full of emojis and beach photos stolen from the internet. I recognized exactly none of the names. She said they were co-workers I'd met at that one happy hour. Maybe I had, maybe I hadn't. The phone flipped back, screen down fast. I helped her pack because that's what good spouses do in commercials. Sunscreen, a floppy hat, paperbacks with easy plots. The bright swimsuit, she said, made her feel like summer. She hugged me at the door, said she'd FaceTime from the hotel balcony, and rolled a suitcase toward her rideshare like a woman untangling herself from a long week. For the first 12 hours, I was proud of myself. I played fetch with our dog, made a fried egg, watered the plants, and decided to repaint the guest room someday. Independence felt like a pair of shoes I hadn't worn since college. I even texted her a photo of our terrier curled like a cinnamon swirl. "We miss you." She replied with a sun emoji, and "be good." I smiled, tossed my phone on the counter, and told myself to breathe. 2 nights later, past 11, my friend Jonah sent a message that arrived like a cold splash. "You seeing this?" He followed with 3 photos. Not screenshots, not edited, just ordinary pictures taken by someone standing on a public beach where people held plastic cups and let the waves run over their feet. There she was, my wife. Hair salt-tangled, sunglasses on top of her head, laughing at something a man said into the curve of her ear. He was exactly the type you hire for a summer ad campaign. Sculpted shoulders, easy grin, a necklace with a tiny anchor. In another photo, she leaned against him, his arm tossed over her like a towel that belonged there. In the third, they walked toward a beach bar, their hands not quite touching, close enough that the air between them looked like it remembered. Jonah's text came after the photos. "I'm in Tampa for a conference. Saw her at St. Pete. Didn't want to assume. Figured you'd want the truth." I stared long enough for the ice to melt in my glass. The refrigerator hummed like a distant generator. The house held its breath. 1,000 possible actions crowded the room. Call her. Call him. Call the hotel. Drive south overnight. Storm the sand. Become a cautionary tale someone recounts over fish tacos. I did none of those. I put the phone face down as if the screen could burn the counter. I took a slow lap through the rooms we chose together. The kitchen where we forgot to defrost chicken, the hallway where we tried to paint swatches that all looked the same at night and completely different by day. The bedroom where her suitcase had left a square on the carpet like a missing tile. On the dresser, beside a bowl of shells we'd collected last spring, sat the tiny Polaroid from our first date. We were both flushed with the optimism of people who think love is weatherproof. I slid the photo into a drawer, not destroyed, not displayed, just put away. I didn't sleep. Not from rage, not from heartbreak. Both of those take energy, and I felt strangely efficient, like my feelings had hired a project manager. By morning, the plan inside me wasn't fireworks. It was a checklist. Step 1. Information. I opened the cloud account for our doorbell camera and checked recent clips. Nothing unusual, mail carrier, a neighbor jogging, a stray cat inspecting the hydrangeas like a health inspector. I scanned her social feed next. She had posted exactly one thing, a sunlit palm tree with a caption about "so needed," tagged with nobody. Commented on by a few co-workers whose profiles looked like stock photos of office life. No smoking gun. I didn't need one. I already had a full ashtray. Step 2. The house. I drove to the hardware store where the morning crowd included 2 contractors, a man buying mulch, and me, the guy who moved with purpose down the aisle of locks. The employee offered help. I asked for a keypad deadbolt and an extra standard set for the back door. She asked about finish. I said nickel. The box felt heavier than it should have. Back home, I set a radio show low, so the voice of a cheerful host kept me from thinking too hard. I unscrewed the old deadbolt she'd once joked was vintage. The new one clicked into place with a satisfying certainty. On a scrap of paper, I wrote the code and tucked it into my wallet. I changed the back door too. Not a barricade, a boundary. Step 3. Paperwork. I'm not a dramatic person by nature. I favor checklists and receipts. I called a lawyer whose number I'd once saved during a tedious insurance issue. She spoke plainly, explained options, outlined timelines, and told me not to text anything I wouldn't want read out loud. I took notes. My handwriting looked like someone else's. At lunch, Jonah called. "You want me to send videos?" he asked, voice tentative. "No," I said. "Photos are enough. Thank you." "You okay?" I looked at the dog sprawled on the cool tile, at the strip of sun across the floor, at the list I'd made in a crooked column. "I will be." He was quiet a beat. "I'm here if you need anything." "I know." After I hung up, I made a sandwich. The mayo was almost out. I added it to the grocery list under light bulbs and coffee. The mundanity felt like proof that life continues even when the map changes. Her texts trickled in that afternoon, a beach shot of toes buried in white sand. "Miss your face," a photo of a plastic cup with a lime wedge. "Girls say hi," I typed, "hope you're relaxing," and sent a thumbs up. A performance, yes, but not for her. For me. I wouldn't be pulled into a scene where I sounded like a detective with a bad script. I'd let the truth speak in a better room. That evening, I walked the dog past the school, past the little free library where someone had left a mystery novel, past the park where a kid's birthday party had forgotten one balloon tied to a bench. When we returned, the porch light clicked on by timer. Trust, once a porch light I believed in, now felt like an electric bill you pay even after you're moving out. Necessary until the end. I stripped the bed, washed the sheets, made the room smell like lemon and water. I stacked her toiletries in a neat line on the vanity like a store display. I placed a small box on the entry table, her spare keys, her gym fob, the loyalty card for our favorite taco spot with one stamp left. Beside it, an envelope containing 2 printed photos Jonah had sent, and a page of typed words I rewrote until the sentences held exactly what I meant, and nothing more. 2 days can change your history, and still only be 48 hours. She messaged that they were driving back early to beat traffic, and would arrive tomorrow at noon. I replied with a heart and set my alarm. I slept on the far edge of the bed out of habit, though there was no one to share space with. Morning crept in pink and cool. I made coffee stronger than usual, the way I do before long drives, even though I wasn't going anywhere. The dog watched me move room to room like I'd misplaced something. Maybe I had misplaced a version of myself that said yes to everything because love asked nicely. At 11:50, I turned off the radio, opened the blinds, and stood in a quiet house that no longer felt like an echo chamber. At 12:08, her car pulled up. She sat in the driver's seat a moment, checked her phone, put on lip balm, and gathered her bag. She walked to the door, typed the old code, and paused at the red flash on the keypad. She tried again. Red. Her shoulders lifted with a shallow breath. I opened the door before she could knock. "Hey," she said, bright, surprised, cautious. A suitcase wheel bumped the step. Sunglasses hid half her face. Salt hung in her hair like a tiny secret. "Welcome back," I said. She reached for a hug. I didn't move. Her smile faltered. That was when her gaze slid past me to the entry table, to the small box, to the envelope with her name angled in my careful print. "What's this?" she asked, forcing a laugh that didn't reach daylight. "Everything you left behind," I said, stepping aside. "And everything you brought home." She set her bag down, looked at the door again, noticed the new keypad, and understood more than I had said out loud. The house held still, like a stage waiting for the next scene. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't rehearse a speech. I let the silence carry all the weight it needed to carry. "Can we talk?" she asked. "We will," I said, "but not the way we used to." Her fingers hovered over the envelope. then lifted it as if it might be hot. The dog sat between us like a referee who finally learned the rules. Outside, a delivery truck rolled by. Somewhere down the street, a mower started. The world kept moving. Inside, we stood exactly where our lives were about to pivot. She stood there frozen, the envelope in her hand like it weighed 100 pounds. Her mouth parted, ready to defend, deny, deflect. Whatever script she'd rehearsed for when lies finally met daylight. I didn't rush her. I'd waited long enough to earn my silence. Her voice came out thin. "What's this supposed to mean?" "Read it," I said. She tore the seal, and the paper trembled as she unfolded it. The photos slid out first, fluttering like feathers onto the floor. Her on the beach, hair tangled by the breeze, laughing at the man whose hand rested far too easily on her hip. She blinked, maybe hoping the pictures would rearrange themselves, rewrite the story. But they didn't. Her breath hitched. "Where did you get these?" "A friend saw you. Sent them to me." "That's not—" She stopped, her eyes darting up, desperate for a new version of the truth. "It's not what it looks like. He's just—" "Don't," I said quietly. "Don't say he's a friend. Don't say I'm paranoid again. The words won't fit anymore." She blinked, tears gathering but not falling yet. "You think I planned this? It was a mistake. I got caught up. It meant nothing." "That's the thing," I said. "It always means something. You don't risk a marriage for nothing." The silence stretched. She looked smaller, her shoulders folding in as though she wanted to vanish into the doorway. I didn't feel satisfaction. I felt the tired calm of someone who had already cried all their tears somewhere between heartbreak and hardware aisles. "I was going to tell you," she whispered. "I just needed to figure out how." "You had your chance," I said. "Every time I asked if you were okay, if we were okay. You could have been honest instead of giving me lectures about trust." She stepped closer, reaching for my arm, but I stepped back. "Please," she said softly. "Don't do this. We can fix it." "No," I said, steady as a metronome. "We can't fix something that broke because you kept pretending it wasn't broken." Her eyes filled again. "Where am I supposed to go?" I nodded toward the driveway. "There's a hotel about 10 minutes from here. You'll figure it out. You always do." Her jaw tightened. "So that's it? You're just done?" I looked at her suitcase still by the door, sand clinging to the wheels, sunscreen still faint on her skin. "You were done the moment you decided a lie was easier than love." The words landed like stones between us. She turned toward the door, paused, then said, "You'll regret this." I almost smiled. "No, I already did the regretting." The screen door creaked, and she stepped out into the afternoon light. The sound of her car engine starting was softer than I expected, but when it faded down the street, the quiet left behind felt bigger than the house itself. For a long time I stood there with the dog watching the sunlight shift across the floor. The air smelled like salt and lemon cleaner. I wasn't angry anymore. I was empty in a way that made room for peace. I brewed coffee, poured it into my favorite mug, the one she never liked because it was chipped, and sat on the porch. A neighbor waved as he mowed his lawn. The normalcy of it made me exhale for what felt like the first time in weeks. My phone buzzed an hour later. Her name flashed across the screen. I let it ring. When the voicemail alert popped up, I pressed play. Her voice was shaky. "I messed up. I panicked. I didn't mean to hurt you. Please, can we just talk? I'll come back home tonight." I deleted it. Then I blocked the number. That night, I changed the Wi-Fi password, the streaming logins, every digital key that tied her name to this house. It wasn't spite. It was closure. She'd built her escape long before I locked the door. The next morning, I woke early, sunlight warm on the sheets that finally smelled like one person again. I made breakfast for the first time in weeks: eggs, toast, and black coffee. The simple rhythm of cracking shells and butter sizzling in a pan reminded me that peace isn't loud. It hums. A few days later, a mutual friend texted that she'd been staying with her sister and that she was devastated. I didn't reply. I wasn't celebrating her pain, but I wasn't volunteering to carry it either. Over the next week, I replaced the photos on the hallway wall, not out of spite, but because I didn't want to keep walking past ghosts. I filled the frames with pictures of mountains, the dog, sunsets from old road trips. Things that belonged to me, that didn't lie. One evening, Jonah stopped by with a six-pack. We sat in the backyard as the cicadas hummed. "You holding up?" he asked. "Better than I expected," I said. "You're handling this pretty calmly." I shrugged. "Rage is loud, closure's quiet." He nodded, lifting his bottle. "To closure, then." I clinked mine against his. "And to better stories." After he left, I sat under the porch light a while, watching moths circle it. Trust, I thought again, was never a light that burned out. It just changed bulbs. I'd install a new one someday, when I was ready to flip the switch again. And when that day came, it wouldn't flicker. It would shine steady because I'd know the difference between someone who loved the light and someone who only stood near it to be seen. Weeks passed. The house no longer felt like an exhibit of what used to be. It started breathing again, slowly, steadily. The air smelled like fresh paint, brewed coffee, and something close to freedom. I'd changed the locks, the curtains, even the rhythm of my days. The only thing I hadn't changed was my silence. That was my choice, my calm revenge. Morgan, my ex-wife now, had tried calling from different numbers. I recognized her persistence like an old song you can't quite forget. I didn't answer. The lawyer handled the papers, and soon enough the word irreconcilable became our final shared sentence. It looked official in ink, clean and emotionless, exactly how I wanted it. One afternoon, while I was reorganizing the garage, Jonah dropped by again. He leaned against the doorway, sipping a soda. "You ever going to take a vacation?" he asked. "Maybe," I said, tightening. "A screw on a shelf. Just waiting until everything settles." "Dude, everything is settled. Go somewhere new. You deserve some sun that doesn't come with drama." He wasn't wrong. So that evening, I booked a weekend trip to Asheville. Mountains instead of beaches. Cool air instead of humid lies. The drive there was quiet, just me, the hum of tires, and a playlist we used to share. When a familiar song came on, I didn't skip it. I let it play, not out of nostalgia, but because it didn't hurt anymore. The song had outgrown her voice in my head. The cabin I rented sat on a hill surrounded by pine trees. There was no ocean here, no scent of sunscreen or betrayal, just wood smoke and peace. The kind of quiet that doesn't accuse you of anything. I spent the days hiking, the nights by a fire pit, learning how stillness sounds when it's not pretending. One morning, I got coffee at a small diner where the waitress had a laugh like wind chimes. She noticed my book and asked about it. We talked about authors, about travel, about the best kind of pie, ordinary things that somehow felt like miracles. When I left, she said, "You seem lighter." "Maybe I finally am," I replied. That night, as the sky turned dark blue, I sat outside watching the stars come out. It hit me that healing doesn't announce itself. It sneaks up on you in the quiet moments, when you realize you haven't checked your phone in hours, when you hum to yourself without thinking, when the weight in your chest has quietly unlatched. But fate, as it tends to, wasn't done writing footnotes. The next week, after I got back home, there was a knock on the door. I opened it to find Morgan standing there. Not glamorous, not confident, just pale, worn, smaller somehow. She held a small envelope. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside. She entered like someone visiting a museum of their own mistakes. Her eyes scanned the new curtains, the empty picture frames. "It looks different," she said. "It feels different," I replied. She handed me the envelope. "It's the signed divorce papers," she said softly. "I figured I'd deliver them myself." I nodded. "Thank you." She hesitated, twisting her hands. I wanted to say, "I'm sorry." Not to fix anything, just to say it. I looked at her for a long moment. "I believe you're sorry," I said, "but that doesn't change what happened." Tears welled in her eyes, but she didn't argue. "You were right," she whispered. "I said you were paranoid because I was guilty. I made you doubt yourself, and that's worse than anything else." I leaned against the counter, arms folded. "The truth has a funny way of catching up. You can't outrun it forever." She nodded, wiping her face. "I just wanted you to know I've started therapy, trying to understand why I did what I did." "That's good," I said. "I hope it helps." There was a long pause before she spoke again. "You seem happy." "I am," I said honestly. "Not because you're gone, because I stopped waiting for someone who wasn't coming home." She looked around one last time, her eyes softening when they landed on the dog curled by the fireplace. "You were a good man, you know." "I still am," I said. "Just not your man anymore." She nodded slowly, then walked to the door. Before she left, she turned and said, "You deserve someone who never makes you question the truth." "I plan on it," I said and meant it. When the door closed behind her, I didn't feel anger. I felt gratitude for endings that give way to beginnings, for lessons written in heartbreak instead of ink. A few weeks later, I returned to that diner in Asheville. The waitress remembered me. "Back for more coffee or the mountains?" she teased. "Maybe both," I said. We talked again, this time longer. I told her about rebuilding, about how silence can be the best revenge because it lets you live louder afterward. She smiled. "Sounds like you're finally free." I nodded. Free and wiser. Driving back that night, the road stretched endless. Ahead of me, lined with pines that swayed like they were whispering, "You made it." And I had. In the end, revenge didn't come from shouting or breaking things. It came from peace, from walking away, changing the locks, and never looking back. From letting her see that my life didn't end where her lies began. She said I was paranoid, but the truth, I was paying attention. And when the proof came, I didn't need to scream or fight. I just opened a new door and locked the old one for good.